Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. My guest today is Ben Westcott, co-managing shareholder at Andrews Myers. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me today.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Not only are you the co-managing partner shareholder of Andrews Myers, also have a few accolades here that I want to show off. Listed multiple times in the best lawyers in America by Woodward White and recognized as a top lawyer by Houstonian Magazine just this month. So congratulations, sir.
Thanks.
So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about ways to improve your business with contracts, the lien process, and navigating through COVID. On Building Value, we go behind the scenes of building operations to showcase the people and products that make buildings work and the value they bring to the community. So cool. So where did you grow up?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay, so that's why the Cajun food influence. Nice. Okay. And how did you end up here in Texas then?
So I came to Houston to go to Rice on a football scholarship.
That's right. Nice. And what position did you play?
Tight end until I had a knee injury and found out what keg beer was. And then my coach said, you couldn't outrun me in 2 days. So he switched me to the offensive line. So
nice.
Tight end was fun, but it was short-lived, and then played on the offensive line after that.
Very cool. Very cool. Did you have any, passion or want to keep playing after Rice?
Yes, definitely. I got injured in my last season, my fourth season at Rice, and so, if I'd have had the opportunity, it was taken away from me. So,
gotcha.
But it allowed me to move on with my life and sort of grow up and move on.
Yeah.
So that was good too.
Nice. So what did you, after playing at Rice, went on to law school at U of H, did you always want to become an attorney, or was that a change later in life?
So you know how when you're in elementary school and you have to write a paper or whatever for your English class about what you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. I said that I wanted to play basketball in college and become a corporate lawyer when I was like 9. And my mom kept it as proof and gave it to me at my law school graduation.
That's awesome.
You got here.
Yeah.
I missed the sport, but
hey,
the rest of it happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So very cool. So always a passion to become a lawyer, and you had a good experience at U of H, I assume?
I really liked the fact that U of H was plugged into the Houston community. And I think that is a big benefit for anybody that wants to be a part of that law school.
Sure.
The law firms that support the program, the university that supports the program, it's just a really good connection.
Nice.
I think it's harder for anyone else who goes to law school outside of Houston to find that.
Sure. And, just the Houston kind of community, you go even smaller with construction, it feels like a, kind of a small town feel, small group in the big city. So I could see that being an advantage.
Definitely.
Houston.
Definitely.
So after graduation, what did you do from there?
So after graduation, I actually had an internship with a construction law firm and was fortunate enough to get a job offer from them.
Nice.
And so I started day one as a construction lawyer. Actually started pre-day one as a construction lawyer. So when I found out there was such a thing as construction law, I have a family background in construction. My uncle owns a construction company. My grandfather had an air conditioning and heating business. And so I was pretty well connected to it. My dad's an engineer. So it just seemed like I knew the terminology. Sure. I knew a little bit about the people. It was an easy segue.
Nice. So what is it that you're doing mostly as a construction lawyer?
So at this point in my career, sure. I'm managing a lot of large litigation and arbitration, and then also counseling companies like yours on project-specific issues. So here's a new customer I've not worked with before. Here are their terms and conditions. Tell me what you think about them. Where are the holes? Where are the blind spots? What can I do to sort of manage some of this risk going into the job?
Sure.
Then as the job progresses, is there a scope issue? Is there a schedule issue? Is there a claim of some kind? How to keep people ahead of the curve. And when I say ahead of the curve, keep them from ending up in litigation. So
Sure.
most of this is, how do I make a good decision so that I can do the best by my customer and also protect my company at the same time?
I imagine those situations come up pretty much all day, every day.
It's fun because I'm getting to work on lots of different projects for lots of different types of companies at the same time.
Sure.
But the law is pretty much the same. So the law is the static part, which sounds funny.
Sure.
The facts are the dynamic part.
Yeah, especially depending on who you're talking to.
That's right. That's right.
Interesting. So, kind of fast forward to today. Can you talk about what Andrews Myers and what your role is there?
Sure. I became the managing partner, a co-managing partner in 2012. And I, along with Patrick Hayes, have been working together to grow the firm from what was a construction litigation boutique, started 31 years ago.
Wow.
To now a more full-service business law firm. So we're trying to do everything that a business might need out of its lawyer.
Gotcha.
We're not doing family law. We're not doing criminal law. We're not doing consumer law. But we're helping businesses throughout Texas. We're expanding our footprint. We have an office in Austin. We have cases in Dallas and San Antonio and Beaumont and Fort Worth and other parts of the state. That's been our focus.
Nice. So, is it still kind of a construction focus?
It is.
But kind of spreading out across their entire business?
So it's really in an organic growth. We are really good at representing construction companies, but we didn't have all of the lawyers necessary to do all the things that a construction company might need.
Sure.
We had to go find employment lawyers. We had to go find bankruptcy lawyers. We had to go find banking lawyers, people who do more than just, help contractors with construction projects.
Sure. No, that's, it makes a lot of sense, and that we've tried to do something similar and to be able to, offer complementary products to our same customers to be able to better serve all of their needs, not just, a specific niche. So
I think it's important to try to figure out why your customers are satisfied with what you do well. And can you take those same things and offer them to either new customers or to your existing customers in connection with new services?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to grow. And it sounds like it's been pretty successful for y'all.
It's exciting to learn new areas of the law, like it is to learn new areas of your business. It's a motivator to me to really try to achieve. I had a coach growing up who said, "You never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse." And so I'm trying to get better, and our firm's trying to get better.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great advice.
Yeah.
So, you've already touched on it a little bit, in just it sounds like a lot of construction law revolves around contracts.
Yes.
So what are some things that, people should look out for? And I know that's kind of a broad, big question, but, what are some things that you've seen as kind of maybe areas of interest in a contract?
So I think, first of all, your organization needs to have a standard procedure for what happens to a contract when it comes in the door.
Sure.
The biggest problem I find is that when a problem happens, we don't know who in the organization was responsible for reviewing the contract and getting it signed and or modified to match the risk profile of the company.
Makes sense.
Having a consistent program for these are the two people that are authorized to review contracts, and one of those two people is going to take it from cradle to grave. Because there are going to be a lot of the pieces of the contract, like you and your dad, will be able to go through and figure out and handle all on your own with no help from anybody else. But there are going to be scope issues that you need help with a certain part of your organization, but you need a point person. Because if you just hand that contract off and don't have a way to get it back, who knows what happens to it?
Yep.
Same thing with your lawyer. New customers, contracts over a certain amount, contracts with a little bit of added schedule risk, things where you know going in, this is going to be dicey.
Sure.
You ought to involve the services of a lawyer who is trained in an expedited review of the contract. And what I mean by that is have someone take a look at it, tell you initially what they think, and then how much of an investment is it going to take to fix it.
Sure.
Because you don't always need to fix it. Sometimes you just need somebody to tell you how to read the street signs. An analogy I use is if you don't know how to speak German and you're driving 100 miles an hour down the Autobahn, how do you know what the street signs mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes you just need somebody sitting in the side seat next to you telling you that means yield or slow down or 60 miles an hour or whatever. So sometimes it's just identifying those issues.
Yeah, it's great advice. Making some mental notes here to we need to update our contract review process, but it is difficult sometimes to digest the language in some of those contracts, and so being able to bounce that off of you or whoever your lawyer is makes a lot of sense to be able to say, here's what it's really saying, and then you can make the decision: is it worth the risk or not to move forward with it the way it's written, or to say we need to make an adjustment.
And one of the other benefits of using a lawyer who's in this market, who works with these same customers all the time, is where some of the lines are.
Sure.
You can revise this, you can't revise this. They're open to changes, they're not open to changes. Well, the last thing you want to do is invest a bunch of money into something that doesn't get you any return.
Right. Right. Or spend a lot of time going back and forth over something that's not really material.
That's right.
In the overall scheme, and you say, let's just sign it and move on.
That's right.
Right. So any kind of specific clauses that jump out or parts of a contract where it might be kind of a red flag for people, or maybe certain things to look out for like that?
Sure. I am always looking for how do we manage the scope.
Okay.
Right off the bat, you have priced what you think the job is. How do you keep the job right there?
Okay.
Or if it moves, how do you make sure you get adequately compensated for it moving?
Sure.
Okay. Either the job takes longer, or the scope grows, or an interchangeable piece. More and more contracts include any and all, necessary, functional, reasonably inferable. All those words mean you don't get any more money even if the scope changes. That's a pretty simple one to try to address. So we're trying to, even if we're going to be a team player, we're going to anticipate some of the things that may happen down the road. If it's a material change, you need to have the right to get more time and more money.
Makes sense.
And so we're trying to do that. I would say another area of the contract where people sort of fall asleep is on the schedule. More and more standard contract forms say, we can change the schedule however we want to, and you got to suck it up. Okay?
Seems a bit risky.
It just says that right off the bat. And there's got to be a way to address that. And there can be delayed start. There can be some level of acceleration based on that delayed start, because I'm going to have some give. I'm going to be able to add some more men. I'm going to be able to expedite certain things. And some of those things will even out. But once it becomes material, we've got to have a way to adjust it.
That makes sense. Yeah, the two big areas, and a lot of the contracts that we work on are probably simpler than what a lot of your clients are seeing. For us, it's mostly formal purchase orders. We have a few master service agreements in place, things like that. But really, where we get into one of the things that we run into a lot is the terms, payment terms, and then in as a result of that, the lien process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you've been very helpful with us in getting our lien process down. Can you kind of talk through the importance of liens, or when, it's important to file them, or the intent to file lien even?
Sure. If you were a bank and you were going to loan somebody money, which is what you do every time you sign a contract,
yes,
would you rather that loan be secured or unsecured?
Secured all day.
Okay. And so that's how I like to think about the lien process. It's a way for you to get a secured loan instead of an unsecured loan.
Yep.
And so just like the contract, it's important for a company who wants to file a lien to have a consistent process. So when you go to set up the job, you've got to have a way to gather all the information you're going to need to file the lien when the time comes. Because everybody's really happy and jovial when the new contract gets signed. They're asking you for things, you're asking them for things. Nobody's predicting any problems. Get that information up front, tuck it away in a file. Hopefully you never have to use it, but when you do, you already have it.
Yeah, and we've spent a lot of time on that project information sheet, and our inside team has been great getting those information, and it's helped a lot for sure.
Yep, and then figuring out next where you are in the pecking order on the job. How far are you away from the owner? Because everything is dictated by how many rungs down you are from the owner. How many notices you need to send, when you need to send those notices. It's complicated.
Sure.
But once you get the process down, it can be managed. And then the other thing I always tell people is you have to have a way to manage change orders, because many of these contracts don't allow you to bill the change orders until the change orders are signed. Okay? But the lien laws are not based on billing. The lien laws are based on when the work was done.
Yep.
So by the time you get to bill this change order, all those deadlines have probably already run. So you got to find a way either to send a dummy invoice within your system so that it shows up as something that's past due, or send a dummy invoice to the customer so that it gets on your list.
Right.
And even if you say, here's main billing 1, here's billing 1A with the change orders, and throw it in the trash if you want to, but I need to protect my lien rights with respect to that change order.
That makes sense, yeah, because you have, 45 days from the month end of when the work was completed, I think, to file the intent.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky. If you are second tier or below, then you'll have until the 15th day of the second month. Right. So if I do the work in January, not when I bill it, if I do the work in January, then I have till March the 15th.
Right.
So it wouldn't be exactly 45 days, because if I did the work on January 4th, it'd be more than 45 days.
Well, yeah, 45 from the month end.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
For us typically.
Correct.
And like you said, others are, if they're different in the pecking order, it might be
a little longer.
That's kind of the rule we've used.
End of the month plus 45 days is fine.
Okay, but like you said, that's not that long of
quick
time, especially if you're still hashing out the details of the contract or the PO, things like that. I can see that easily slipping.
We see many contracts with payment terms that are 60 or 90 days. The deadline's already passed.
Yep.
Before you have even thought that you might be past due.
Yeah, and that and a lot of times these things end up as pay when paid, and so that's could be well beyond that 60 days.
Yeah, and I think effective communication. You have to build a relationship with your customer. You have to tell your customer, look, this is just me doing what I need to do to protect myself. If you think there's something wrong with my bill, or I'm billing for something that's not owed, I want to have a conversation about it. I know that you'll eventually pay me, but until then, I need to be protected.
Absolutely. And, Erica, our accounting manager, has done a great job with that. And a lot of times when she does do that kind of initial call to say, hey, we're going to need to send our intent to file lien, they'd say, that's good. We want you to file that. That'll actually kind of help our process of getting the billing sorted out and getting things done. So we thought it would have a negative response a lot of times, but most of the time it's like you said, everybody kind of understands the process, and it hasn't been a big deal.
Yeah. I think, again, internal communication is key. You don't want to call your lawyer on the 14th and say, I haven't done any of my homework. I need to do something tomorrow. And you also want to be consistent in your process, because your customers who are getting the notices are going to be talking to other customers. And if they're not also getting the notices, it's going to seem like you're doing favors for certain people and not others.
Right. No, definitely want to, be same across the board there, based on kind of those guidelines that you've laid out for us. And so far it's worked really well.
I'm glad.
Yeah. So, if we kind of look back over the last, almost coming up on a year now of March, kind of the beginning of the COVID pandemic, what have you seen as an impact for COVID on these contracts and this whole process over the last 8-10 months?
Well, I think we've gone through an evolution, and the evolution continues. I mean, the initial reaction was panic.
Yes.
Both in terms of material supply and jobs getting canceled.
Yep.
I think that the construction industry as a whole figured out pretty quickly that they needed to put their swords down and start talking to each other and start figuring out ways to get things built.
Yep.
Because the owners need things built and everybody else needs stuff to build. So figuring out a way to manage these hiccups, these new regulations, these additional safety protocols.
Yep.
I mean, the construction industry as a whole has changed so much in my career with the focus on safety.
Oh, yeah.
This is just another layer. Everyone needs to be focused on safety and the safety of their people, and this is just another way to do that.
Sure. So does that, you're talking about safety on the job site, is that kind of the COVID protocols and a safe working environment like that, does that fall under kind of the same liability that a contractor would face otherwise for other safety violations? Or
well, let's break it into two pieces.
Okay.
The first thing is most contracts include something that talk about changes in law.
Okay.
Okay? And so an OSHA law has been on the books for a long time, right? Most of these COVID laws are brand new, and some of them are changing even now.
Yep.
And so you want to look at the contract and who's responsible for changes in law and whether there are ways to try to ask for more compensation to deal with those changes in law.
Okay.
So OSHA requirements, other local rules with respect to safety, those have usually been on the books. You got to bake those into your contract from the beginning. That's in your price. You're obligated to do it. With respect to COVID, if your contract was signed after some of these laws were passed, you probably have to include all that stuff in your price.
Yep.
So going back to the contract review part, we're going to want to make sure that we have adequate mechanisms in your terms, especially if you're going to have a lot of rules and regulations relating to site access and
Yep.
things like that, where if those rules change, you can be compensated for it.
That makes sense. And you mentioned the material shortages, and initially that was a big concern of ours. Luckily, we haven't had very many supply chain issues, but I think that may have been an area where the contract review process would have been a little would have been nice to have that a little bit more in place before that, to make sure we didn't miss any deadlines or anything like that. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Most people don't understand that as between the buyer and the seller, unless the contract says otherwise, the seller in Texas takes the risk of all those shortages. And so it's not something that you can just ignore and hope fixes itself.
Yeah.
If you're a straight material supplier, then we have something called the Uniform Commercial Code.
Yes.
That can provide some help. If you're providing labor and materials, the court's going to look at what the predominant part of the contract is. So if it's more labor than materials, then you're not going to have that protection. So for most construction companies, they're going to have to look to the contract. For some people who are just supplying material, they may have some protection in the code, Uniform Commercial Code.
Okay. Interesting. So do you see this changing kind of COVID, the COVID environment, or having to, for engineers, design a space in a way that is safer, or that an owner would be responsible for a safe environment, things like that? How do you, is that something that's going to end up in the courts being argued over?
I think that this is something to really look out for. I think, first of all, you're seeing developers already looking at ways to attract people back to the office.
Yes.
By providing these types of systems, voice-activated elevators, touch-free security systems.
Yep. Improved HVAC.
Yes.
Yes.
The UV lamps, things of that nature. there are going to be more perks like we saw with LEAD a few years back. That was a big marketing part of a developer's business. I think you're going to see many more of these going forward to try to attract people to stay at the office and to continue to invest in office. As far as the liability goes, the standard of care is always changing. Think about what the standard of care for your parents were putting you in the car as a little kid.
Just set you right next to him and hold on.
Right. You put the arm up when you hit the brakes.
Yeah.
Think about how much that's changed in our lifetime.
Yeah.
These standards continue to change. And I think one of those standards is going to be relating to premises. Who you allow into the premises, what type of protocols and things are followed for who comes into the premises. You've already seen a lot of major corporations installing security measures at the entrance to their facilities, really controlling who comes in and comes out. That's a part of this. There's no foolproof way to protect yourself, but certainly any of these additional measures can only help.
Sure. And I agree, especially now, the people that are, going the extra effort to have the safe spaces. I think especially in hospitality and some of the retail and restaurants that are using that to say, hey, we're creating this safer environment. Don't know if you can necessarily call it safe, but you say we're doing everything we can to make this safe to attract in more people. I agree. That's definitely kind of the forward edge of the marketing for this, but I think longer term it's going to become the standard, right?
Sure. And one of the things that we as responsible business owners need to do is create an environment for our employees.
Absolutely.
Where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be part of it as well.
Yeah, we did that early on. You mentioned the access restrictions. We did that. We had the screening tool, upgraded air filters. We've got UV in our panel shop, things like that. So there's a lot of things that we've tried to do to make that safe for the employees, and then doing some things in the back for the customers. They come in as well. But similar situation for us. We want employees and the customers to feel safe,
right?
As well as our field service techs and salesmen. They're the ones really out in front of all these buildings and seeing it on the other side.
Yeah, and arming them with knowledge, right?
Yep.
Giving them confidence that you're looking out for them. I also think coming this next legislative session, both at the Texas level and in the federal specter, we're going to find some bills being presented to try to address this, because right now there's two problems. One, there's a power struggle between local, state, and federal government. Who's really in charge when it comes to managing pandemics and the like? And then the other is if I open my business, what am I doing as far as the risk to my company, both in terms of visitors and employees working at the company? Certainly we want to reward responsible employers for giving employees jobs.
Absolutely.
We do not want to reward people for creating dangerous conditions. And so where's the line, and how do we promote one activity and deter the other?
Yeah, that's going to be a big issue I can see coming for sure. And since you kind of mentioned it, I mean, new laws coming or recent changes to laws, anything that you've seen happen over the last year or 2 years, that new changes to laws or legislation that we should be aware of?
Sure. First of all, I'll loop back on the COVID.
Yep.
I think for most employers who carry workers' compensation insurance, there's already protection in place.
Okay.
Because that workers' compensation insurance should apply to anyone who contracts COVID in connection with their job.
Okay.
Okay? So it's just like any other workplace injury or sickness.
Okay.
If somebody were to get hurt on the job and they're working for you as an employee, they would get their workers' compensation benefit. That would deal with the issue. The law as it stands now prevents that employee from suing their company for damages relating to that injury, because the workers' comp is intended to protect against that.
Interesting.
Okay. So the same analysis should apply to COVID. What it doesn't protect is your customers coming into the building. It doesn't protect you going into other people's spaces.
Sure.
Or situations where it's unclear where the COVID was contracted. And so that's going to be an issue that's going to be dealt with in this omnibus COVID bill that we're told is coming. We've seen some preliminary information on it, but until the actual bill is filed, I'm going to kind of reserve some of my comments. I'm guessing what it might be.
Sure.
I can tell you that living in Texas, it's going to be pro-business.
Mm-hmm.
Living in Texas, it's going to be something that is going to try to reduce the number of lawsuits that get filed. That's why Texas has been an attractive place for businesses to come and to exist and to grow. And I don't see that being any different in this particular piece of legislation.
Yeah, and that's only been amplified over the last, 8 to 12 months.
Right.
We've seen a lot of major companies and a pretty big population increase over that time period. So.
Right. The other thing that we see on the horizon is a bill that I personally am involved in that is going to try to clarify responsibility for design defects.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if an owner hires an architect to prepare a set of plans, and then the owner provides that set of plans to a contractor, logic would tell you that the contractor wouldn't be responsible for any problems in those plans. Okay? Well, Texas doesn't follow logic in this particular instance. And so it's actually one of 2 of the 50 states that don't follow that rule.
Okay.
So we're in a super minority here. And so we're trying to change that to put Texas on the same level as the other 48 states and the federal government, such that when an owner provides a set of plans to a contractor, the contractor is entitled to rely upon the plans and is not responsible for defects in those plans. But the party who prepared the plans is responsible for those defects.
Interesting. So is that going to go back to the engineer that stamped the drawings, basically?
So Texas has one other problem that we're trying to fix with this.
Okay.
In some states, if the owner provides the plans to the contractor and the plans were bad, the contractor can pursue a claim against the architect or engineer who prepared the plans. In Texas, they cannot do that. Texas has a very strong economic loss rule that says the contractor actually has to go against the owner, who then has to go against the engineer.
Oh, okay.
Which is inefficient.
Yeah, following the money, basically.
Inefficient at best. In this particular instance, until this law gets passed, the contractor's kind of stuck with no remedy. Can't go after the architect or engineer. The owner puts something in the contract that says, whatever's wrong with the plans, it's your problem. And there's no legal remedy, no statutory remedy to fix it. So we're trying to provide a statutory remedy that says the contractor's not responsible for those errors, and it'll force the owner to pursue the engineer who is responsible or architect who is responsible for the problems with the plans.
Interesting. So I can see that impacting the kind of RFI process and really the upfront design process that a lot of these projects are happening so fast. And, I don't think it's through any fault of the engineers that you move from one project to another project, and they have deadlines too, that there's, small gaps and things that are missing in the plans that get filled in as it gets built. Well, now they may want to go back to the engineer and get it more clarified, or just say, hey, I'm not responsible for building it the way that it is. It needs to be more clear on the drawings. Do you see that issue coming up?
I'm a little bit of a cynic here, okay? Every other state in the country does just fine without a statutory fix, okay? So what I don't want to do is leave the impression that everything in Texas is going to change once this law hopefully gets passed.
Sure.
What I would rather say is this is the way it has been and the way it should be, and everybody else is living by the same rules, and there's not any real problem.
Sure.
It's just those drastic cases where people aren't being conscientious and dealing with problems fairly where we need this law.
That makes sense.
So I will tell you that I've seen, and I'm sure you see even more than me, most projects nowadays are design assist,
Yes.
construction manager at risk, even design build. And so there's much more collaboration involved in most commercial projects than there was even 5 years ago.
Yep.
And so the owner is talking to the engineer and the contractor at the same time about what the best solution is and getting all the heads together to decide what to do before the contract is finalized.
Yep.
That fixes most of the problems right there. And getting conscientious team members together to talk and decide not what looks the best, right? But both looks, performs, and continues to perform best.
Right. And I would throw in there what's maybe not always the lowest price either, right?
Well, you get what you pay for. Most things in life you get what you pay for.
Sure.
If it's cheap, there's a reason.
Yeah. No, it's unfortunate on some of the, projects that come out through the kind of formal bid process. A lot of times that, price can be a determining factor. And so, like you said, I think that design build process and that more collaboration definitely lends itself to, I would say, kind of aligning the contractor and the engineer more towards the owner and their ultimate goal in the project.
Sure, and looking at sort of like how I look at our relationship with our clients. What's the life cycle cost?
Yep.
Right? I mean, you can get it real cheap right now, but is it going to totally break down in the next 3 years and you're going to have to replace it? What's the point? You're spending all the time and the money to get it done. You better get it done right and look at the long-term cost.
Yep.
Same thing with your lawyer. Getting your lawyer involved in these small stages early on save you a lot of money in the long run.
Right.
Look at how to make a good decision now, not how to get out of trouble after the bad decision's already been made.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of fix or whatever,
right?
whatever
Exactly.
the savings is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it'll be interesting to see that legislation go through. When do you think that would pass?
So, we're still in flux. The Texas legislature only meets every 2 years, right? And so this session, there's a lot of concern about who can safely come to the Capitol, what the hearing process is going to look like, and so I would think that this session is going to be compressed.
Yep.
And so there'll be less bills. There'll be less bills that get heard. There'll be less bills that get passed. This legislation is very important, and so we're hopeful that it's going to get the attention it deserves. The typical timeline for a bill is for it to either be dead or pass sometime in the May-June timeframe.
Okay.
And then there's a period of time for the governor to sign it or veto it. So hopefully by the summertime we'll have our answer.
Yep.
Don't ever want to count your chickens before they hatch, but we certainly hope that it's headed in the right direction.
Nice. Well, yeah, hopefully we can, go to a restaurant and celebrate with a beer the passing of that bill, post vaccine and everything else. Hopefully things are getting back to normal a little bit this summer.
And we won't have to buy a $7 bag of pretzels in order to get the beer.
Right. And be able to sit inside because it'll be hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this is really neat to me to be able to do this, having started with your dad way back when. And,
18 years is our 19th year.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Anytime I drive to a customer's office, I think back to, the first time I met the customer and where I first met the customer, and the history of the relationship has been pretty neat to see your company grow, and it's been pretty impressive as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah, my dad and Scott started in 2003 out of my dad's study and moved to an office trailer, basically.
Been there.
Yeah, with a couple of shipping containers, and now we're in a little over 22,000 square feet and almost 30 employees. So a lot has changed over the last 18 years, and hopefully, Scott and I will be able to kind of take it to the next level. And my dad's gonna stick around. He wants to, quote unquote, just be a salesman. So it'd be great to have him still, working and doing what he loves, which is crawling around in basements and solving problems. So
definitely, it's really neat to see the growth of the company, all the different product lines, the new manufacturers, just the relationships you guys are be able to build over the years, both upstream and downstream of your company.
Yep. Yeah, there's a book called Small Giants, and one of the guys in there talks about the 3 phases that every business goes through. He says there's the startup, the throw up, and the grow up. And hopefully we were in startup for a long time. We threw up probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and hopefully we're been growing up since then. So hopefully we'll continue to grow.
Definitely. It's interesting, working with people. Mm-hmm. Because they're growing with you.
Yep.
And you're learning from them, they're learning from you. And just having, team members who aren't satisfied with where they are. They're always looking to better themselves, to better the company.
Yep.
Not for their personal benefit, but for the benefit of the team.
Yeah, and we're really fortunate to have some people that have been with us since the beginning. I mean, Todd and Chris, they pretty much there from the beginning, and a few others. So yeah, it's been great to see people, start in the warehouse or in the panel shop and take on other roles and be moving into inside sales or outside sales or even into field service. So yeah, it's even with a small company, it's been great to be able to see people grow and have that path to new opportunities.
Definitely.
So, well, Ben, I really enjoyed having you on. Is there any other words of wisdom that you have for us, or any other things that we didn't cover today?
I would say a couple of things. Number one, if you don't have a person dedicated in your company to looking at those contracts, try to find one.
Yes.
And if you don't have one, get a lawyer involved to train someone, because that's definitely an option.
Okay.
We've done that for several smaller businesses. This is going to be my person who looks at these contracts. Let's work with them, do some educational programs, sort of create a checklist of things to look for.
Yep.
Same thing with the liens.
Yeah.
Get a process. Have a person. It's going to pay off.
Definitely has.
Almost immediately.
Yep.
And then the last part is we're so fortunate to live in a country where you can personally get involved in the legislative process. You can call your local state rep. You can call your state senator. And you can ask them to support bills like this design defect legislation. You can tell them how important it is for your company. You can tell them how important it is for your employees. And for other bills.
Sure.
Just getting involved. It's, people complain sometimes about the political process. We still live in the best country in the world.
Absolutely.
Because we have a personal stake in the political process.
Very cool. It's great advice. I mean, it has, and I think the last part there is definitely timely with everything that's been going on. I think everybody on potentially both sides is disgruntled, like you said, and so yeah, you can complain or you can do something about it. So that's great advice.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What about, I got one last question for you. What about any advice for anybody that might be kind of starting their career in the construction industry? What would be your advice for them?
So I think not just the construction business, but for any recent graduate of a vocational program, a undergraduate program, a graduate program, you got to find a mentor. You got to find somebody who has seen it before, who has done it before, because it's really hard to learn by burning yourself, right? It's better to have somebody say, don't touch that, go this direction. Here's what worked for me. Somebody who can, show you the ropes.
Yep.
And that's not always somebody that you work for or work with.
Sure.
Because you want to be able to have open communication with that person about how you can grow.
Absolutely.
And that's not always something that you can be comfortable doing inside of your own workplace, right? And so I was very fortunate to have some mentors growing up that were looking out for me. I participate in a mentor program now at Rice with the football players.
Oh, that's great.
And so I just get a lot of benefit, personal benefit from that, because I got a lot of personal benefit from others doing that for me when I was just starting out in my career.
Absolutely.
So that'd be a big piece of advice. And also, to the extent you're not involved, get involved in a trade organization, because it's a great opportunity for you to be around your peers and see how things are done outside of your particular company.
Yep. No, both great pieces of advice. And, I think it's kind of interesting. We grow up and we play sports and you have a coach and you have teachers and through school, and then you graduate and you get out into the real world and it's kind of like, good luck.
Bye.
You're on your own now, but you shouldn't stop learning, or you need that coach or that person to push you or to challenge you. So I've had a mentor the last 4 or 5 years now, and it's been great. And definitely to have that outside perspective and to push you is great, and also to call BS when you need it, right?
Of course. A good mentor knows when to pick you up and knows when to knock you down.
Yeah.
So it's important to have somebody who can hold you accountable, but also somebody who can see when you need a kind word as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ben, really enjoyed having you on the show. Shared a lot of great information with us, and we'll remind everyone this is for informational purposes only. If you're seeking legal advice, to definitely contact your attorney. So, but otherwise, really enjoyed the conversation. Always great working with you, and it's been great kind of having y'all as a resource and helping us over the years. So, thank you for that, sir.
Glad to do it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening and watching today on this episode of Building Value, and we hope to see you on the next one.